Today we're going to take you through step-by-step instructions on how to install the MPLS3 locking system, including door preparation, latch reverse, jamb preparation, and Astragal conversion. Before we begin, please make sure you have the following tools to ensure proper installation: tape measure, pencil, template, plunge router, drill, pneumatic cutoff tool, clamps. Also, for safety precaution, you'll need safety eyewear, hearing protection, mask, gloves, shop vacuum. The first thing you'll want to do to prepare the door is to mark the center of the door. Do this by measuring the width of the door's edge and marking the center. The strike plates are designed to be centered on a 1 3/4 inch thick door panel. Any other door widths will need to be set up so that the center of the template is 7/8 of an inch from the interior edge. Now we're going to adjust the template to the thickness of the door. Place the template over the long edge of the door that you just marked. Loosen 4 knobs on the template to allow the guides to float. Align the center marks on the ends of the template to the center mark on the door. Adjust the guides in against the edge of the door. As you're doing this, be sure not to make them too tight. Then, tighten the 2 knobs on one edge and slide the template along the door's edge until the mark shows on the other side of the template. Once you see the mark, align the back side of the template with the front and tighten those 2 knobs. Now you should be able to easily slide the template along the door without rocking on the door's edge. Next, install the eurogroove cutter into the router and tighten. Then use a bench or tabletop to plunge the router and set the stop until the step part of the cutter is even with the thickness of the stainless steel gear leg. We recommend making a few shallow cuts on the door and adjust the depth until the gear leg sits flush on the edge of the door. Before you begin cutting, make sure you are wearing appropriate protective gear, including mask, eyewear, and hearing devices. Now, to properly cut the eurogroove, slowly run the router along the full length of the door. We recommend making your cuts progressively deeper using multiple passes. Also, keep a shop vac nearby to clear any debris. As shown here, pull a tape measure from the bottom edge of the door. Now set a stop block at the 26 1/4 inch mark and also at the 43 1/2 inch mark. You can also use a short piece of aluminum angle for this. Next, remove the eurogroove router bit. Now you want to plunge the router into its deepest setting and install the 1/2 inch plunge bit into the router. The bit should extend beyond the template to about 2 9/16 of an inch. Once you reach this depth, fully tighten the bit and allow the plunge router to return to its highest setting. Please note that the router bit may still extend below the top of the template. This is normal. Place the template over the edge of the door between the 2 stops as shown. Leave one end of the template raised up. Start the router and slowly lower the template until it is flush with the door. Slide the template between the stops, making multiple passes, only plunging a 1/2 inch each time until bottomed out. Once you've reached this point, stop the router and bring it back to the top position. Slowly lift the template off the door's edge. Using a shop vacuum, thoroughly clear the shavings out of the pocket. Next, to make the router easier to work with, remove the router motor from the plunge base on the template. Place the template on the door edge and using a tape measure, starting from the bottom of the door, align the 36 inch mark on the template with the mark on the measuring tape. Using clamps on both sides will help keep the template from moving along the door edge. Keep in mind, you want the 2 small holes on the template pointing toward the bottom of the door. Once this is in place, drill holes into the face of the door. This works best if you drill from both sides of the door and not all the way through from just one side. We recommend that you start with the 1/4 inch holes, then the 1/2 inch holes, and finish with the 3/4 inch hole. Once all of the holes have been drilled, you will need to drill the 1/4 inch holes again with a 3/4 inch bit. Do this by simply undoing the clamps and slide the 3/4 inch drill bushing over the top of each 1/4 inch hole. Using the 3/4 inch drill bit, drill through the 1/4 inch hole to expand for the lock set clearance. You should now have an elongated slot for the clearance of the key set. Vacuum all debris out of the pocket. Now you want to install the gear set into the bottom end of the door, making sure that the lower leg of the gear set sits flush with the bottom of the door. Using a number 20 Torx driver, remove the 2 screws on the gear set and place the top of the extension over the screw holes and reinstall the screws. Again, make sure that the bottom extension is flush with the bottom of the door. Then use a straight edge to mark the top of the door onto the end of the top extension. Use a cutoff wheel or an abrasive blade capable of cutting through stainless steel to trim the top extension to the appropriate length. Now, before you begin the next step, make sure the bottom extension is flush with the bottom of the door. Now use the screws provided to attach the gear set to the edge of the door. Make sure not to over-tighten the screws and strip them out. There should be 11 screws used on 6/8 doors and 13 screws for the 8/0 doors. Once these are all in, you've completed the door preparation and you're ready to set the handing. Now we're going to show you how to reverse the latch on the P2000 gearbox for a left or right-hand configuration. First, using a construction or spindle tool, engage the gearbox and locking points. You'll notice that the lock is in the unlocked state with the deadbolt not thrown. Now depress the anti-slam pin and hold to unlock the gearbox so that the locking points can be engaged. Next, rotate the handle to engage the locking points. Do this by lifting the handle. Next, pull the latch out until it clears the face bar. Once the latch clears, it can be turned to achieve the correct handing. Finally, position the latch after it has been rotated to the other handing position. Now you have successfully reversed the latch, and you're ready to move on to the jamb preparation section. To prep the jamb, you'll need to mark the locations on the strike plates on the jamb. To do this, you'll need to keep in mind that the dimensions are from the theoretical bottom of the door, so keep this in mind when you add your measurement from the system. If you're using an Imperial 5Y sill and sweep system, the dimension you'll add should be 1 3/4 inches. Or if you are using automated equipment such as the Caval strike router, you will need to mark the center of the cutouts. Next, place the template onto the edge of the jamb. Make sure that the stop on the template is flush with the face of the jamb. Align the template with the mark you made on the jamb and lock it into place. Using one of the templates, place the router bit through the hole and put a strike plate on the bottom surface. Make sure to adjust the depth of the router bit until it is flush with the top surface of the strike plate. Now, lock the router into position. Now we're going to route out for the strike plate. Place the router bit into the template opening and slightly tip the router until the bit clears the jamb. Now turn on the router and slowly tip the router back onto the face of the template. Using the bearing as a guide, go around all 4 sides of the template. You will need to make a couple of passes in the middle to clear out all of the material. When this is done, turn off the router and remove it from the template. If the mortise looks complete, then go ahead and remove the template from the jamb. Repeat this machining for the other 2 strike plates. Use a 1/2-inch drill for the tongue strikes and a 5/8 drill for the center strike. Drill holes on each end of the area and use a sharp knife or jigsaw to cut between and connect the holes. The opening should be slightly larger than the opening on the strike plate. Now place the strike plate into the mortises that you just made. Fasten them to the jamb using 3/4-inch screws provided with the strike plate in the handset kit. Also note that when the door is permanently installed in the house, the 3/4-inch screws should be replaced with the 2-inch screws provided. This will help support the strike plates with the framing material. If you have a French door system, we're ready to show you how to prep the Astragal to accept the additional strike plates. Start by laying your Astragal onto the workbench. Locate the top of the Astragal, or the end without the flexible boot, and slide off the top channel cover. Now, slide the chute bolt assembly down the Astragal to get it away from the bolt guide. Now, using a flatbed screwdriver or a similar tool, drive out the bolt guide to the end of the Astragal. To do this, it helps if you apply force to the bottom edge of the bolt guide. Once the bolt guide is removed, slide the bolt assembly out of the end of the Astragal and set all of the various components aside. With these aside, you'll want to take the existing strike and deadbolt bases and slide them out of the top of the Astragal. Because some of the system assemblies will have strike plates pre-applied, loosen the screws to remove them. Next, assemble the provided split strike bases as shown and slide them into the top end of the Astragal. Note that 2 of these are used for the top and bottom flipper strikes, and the center strike uses 3. Now position the bottom edge of each plate from the bottom edge of the Astragal as follows. Lower plate at 11 1/4 inches, center plate at 30 3/4 inches. On 6'8" doors, the upper plate should be placed at 64 1/4 inches. On 8-foot doors, the upper plate should be placed at 67 7/8 inches. Now align the split bases under the flipper strike plate as shown and insert the 2-inch screws provided in the handle set until they bottom out. Loosen the screws slightly and slide the assembly to the side. Next, drill a 3/16" hole at locations marked by the screws. Once drilled, reposition the strike plate and tighten the screws just enough to keep them positioned. And note, when the Astragal is mounted on the door, these screws need to be fastened fully into the door edge. Now repeat this on the top and center strike plates. Now for the final step, you need to reinstall the slide bolt assembly and then tap the bolt guide back into the end of the Astragal. And remember that the bottom of the bolt guide is tapered, so position it with the shallow side first. Finally, you'll need to reinstall the channel cover. Now that you've successfully installed the MPLS3, your customers can rest assured knowing they have complete security from potential intruders and enhanced resistance to the outside elements.